So, 2 Samuel chapter 15. I know you probably won't remember this, but the last time we were in 2 Samuel, we were in chapter 14, of course. We finished up the chapter. Did you notice that we skipped a verse? Did anyone catch that? We did. We skipped a verse, and it was a big one, too. It was verse 26. We completely missed it. I believe I read over verse 25, and I didn't talk about it too much, so let's do a little cleanup work here with chapter 14, verse 25 and verse 26. That was giving us a description of Absalom. And I did mention, what we first saw there in verse 25, that this guy was just like perfect in every way. He makes you sick if you're a guy. Mr. Perfect, not a blemish on him. And that is very disarming for us men, because generally, no matter who it is, no matter how close to perfect they are, there's always something that you can kind of pick on and use as a little bit of a solace for yourself, you can say something to the effect of, he's okay, but, look at those ears. Looks like he's trying to get a signal from Starlink, or, yeah, he's okay, he's a good-looking guy, but that nose does not belong on that face. There's usually something you can pick on, but from what we gather from verse 25, verse 26 as well, to throw that in there, there just was no ammo at all for us men. And it's even worse if you're a bald guy or you're balding, because verse 26, that's the killer. We read in verse 26 that this guy grew 200 shekels of hair every year. He would get this annual haircut. And every year, they would weigh the guy's hair after they cut his hair. It was 200 shekels worth. Anyone know how much weight that is? That's 5 pounds. That's excessive hair. That's extra hair. All right, I can't even get enough to cover the top of my head. He has 5 pounds every year of excess hair. So this guy was just built different. Typical head of hair is ounces, not pounds. This is crazy stuff. Makes you wonder what was in David's genes, that from his lineage would come this guy that's growing 5 pounds of extra hair every year. But I guess those were pretty good genes, because after all, it was from the line of David, from David's genes, that would eventually come the Christ. Now, it was more spiritual than it was physical, but clearly there was something unusual going on about this guy, Mr. Perfect. Well, the good news is, if there is a solace for the jealous men out there, the solace is that Mr. Perfect on the outside was not Mr. Perfect on the inside. That on the inside, this guy was consumed by anger because of how things had been going in his family. And that anger has started to turn to bitterness already. And you're going to see that just continue to evolve in this chapter. That anger in Absalom turning to absolute bitterness. And it's going to be so bad that bitterness is going to end up being the death of this guy. His father did not help matters. By the time we reach chapter 15, we are 7 years removed from the rape of Tamar. 7 years. And David still has not addressed the issue. He has not done anything to try to bring some kind of resolve to the situation in some kind of constructive way. For at least the last 5 years of that, David has had nothing to do with his son, Absalom. So let's just take just real quick, go over the overview of the timeline. Once again, ground zero, we'll call that Amnon raping Tamar. 2 years later, so that was 7 years ago, right? 2 years later, Absalom kills Amnon. Then 3 years later, this is when we studied about Joab manipulating both David and Absalom to try to get them together, to try to get them talking, to try to hope that they would work things out. And that did not work, because then for the next 2 years, David and Absalom are living in the Holy Land. Yes, Absalom has come back to the Holy Land now after those 3 years. But for the final 2 years of this, they are living in the Holy Land as complete strangers. David basically wants nothing to do with him. And so at the end of those 7 years, the end of chapter 14, Absalom decides, okay, that's it. I've got to do something. I'm going to give my relationship with my dad one last try. I mean, this is it. I'm going to give it one last try. And we studied about the ineffectual kiss, or, the empty kiss. David gives him this public display of affection. He kisses him publicly to let the nation know, okay, my son Absalom's no longer on the hit list. He's accepted nationally. But then immediately after that, David goes right back to ignoring Absalom and wanting nothing to do with Absalom. So in chapter 15 now, Absalom is done being Mr. Nice Guy. It's a funny thing to say about a murderer who is never nice at all, but I need the rhetoric for the build. He's done being Mr. Nice Guy. He comes to the point where he says, okay, that's it. I gave my dad one last chance. He's still a jerk. And if that's how he's going to be, fine. I'm going to come for his throne. I'm going to take him down. I'm going to make him regret the day that he messed with me. And that is going to put him at war with David, yes, but worse. It's going to put him at war against the Lord. Because there's a fact here that you can't get around, and that is that David is God's guy. Warts and all, mistakes and all, imperfections and all, David is God's guy, and Absalom effectively pits himself against the Lord here. We begin reading in verse 1. It says, after this, Absalom, I don't know why I keep saying Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. Probably not what you would think. This is not a militia that he's building. This is just all political theater. Absalom is not the king, but he wants to look like one. This is like step one of his plan. He wants to look like a king. So he gets himself a chariot, not because he needs one, but because kings have chariots. He gets himself horses, not because he has anywhere to go, but because kings have horses. And he gets himself 50 guys, this entourage, to go out in front of him and kind of, announce him and celebrate him wherever they go. Why? Simply because kings have an entourage. And so he's basically trying to manufacture his own majesty here in the eyes of the people. That's part one of his plan. He's easing into this, okay? And it is brilliant. It is devious. It's devilish, but it is brilliant what he does. He starts off easy, just trying to manufacture majesty. Verse 2. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way of the gate. All right, here's something we've studied. The gate, the entrance of a city, that was generally like the city of public life. Whatever city it was. If it was a walled city and it had a front gate, that was where all the city's business was done, all the official stuff. Any court cases that you needed to have tried, you would come to the city gate. There would be judges there. You would present your case to the judge, and then he would make a judgment. Or, in the case of Israel at this time in history, if you brought your case to the city gate and you had it tried by the local judge there, if the local judge decided that needed elevated to the king, well, then it would get elevated to the king. In this case, that's King David, and that's kind of what's being framed here in these verses. We're seeing Absalom showing up bright and early. Basically, he's trying to get there before anyone else. He wants to beat everyone to the gate so that he can catch them before they go in. And it just shows you how determined this guy is to change the hearts of the nation here. He's intercepting them. And it says, reading on in verse 2, here's why. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for judgment, so again, that would go through a local judge first, that may or may not get elevated to King David. But when a man had a dispute, Absalom would call to him and say, from what city are you? And when he said, your servant is of such and such a tribe in Israel, verse 3, Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right, but there is no man designated by the king to hear you. That was not a particular case that has just been given to us. This is just Absalom's gig. This is what he's doing. This is what he's trying to do with everyone. He would try to catch them before they got into the gate and say, oh, hey, what's your case about? Let me hear what's going on. And then when the guy would share where he's from and start into the case, Absalom would say, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, the judges, they're not hearing folks from your neck of the woods. Yeah, you're not going to be able to even get a judge to hear your case and pass a verdict on it. It's just unfortunate, David's just not interested. I heard David with my own mouth, or with my own ears, say that those folks from the south side, they're trouble, and we're not going to hear their cases anymore. It's that kind of thing. He was trying to tell them that David has this set up so that their cases are not going to be heard. It was manipulation, is what it was. It was propaganda, political propaganda. It was sabotage for King David. So he's poisoning the well for David and trying to destroy the reputation of David in the hearts and minds of the people. So what comes next after that? What's a person doing when they're trying to destroy someone else's reputation before other people? What are they trying to do? Boom, there it is. They're not just trying to destroy someone's reputation for the sake of destroying someone's reputation. They're trying to destroy someone's reputation so that you can turn your admiration from that person to them. That's what they're doing. And that's exactly what Absalom is going to do here. He's trying to get them to think more highly of him than they do of David. Verse 4. Then Absalom would say, oh, that I were judge in the land. Then every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice. Okay, this is dirty politics. At the onset of our study in 2 Samuel, I warned you that this book was a very political book, and that there was a lot of dirty politics in it, and that's what this is, dirty politics. This is complete deception. He's trying to convince the people, hey, David, he does not care about you, but I do. I love you, man. In your case, your problems, they're important to me. I really care. And of course, none of that was true. And thankfully, the Word of God has already given us a sneak peek of that in the previous chapter. We saw David take an extreme interest in the case that was brought to him by the woman of Tekoa. Now, that was a completely fake case, but you got to see David's interest. You got to see David taking matters seriously, caring about the people, caring about the everyday commoner within the nation of Israel. So Absalom is completely deceptive about this, but that deception was working. He was undermining David. And unfortunately, David had no clue that any of this was going on. He was completely oblivious to this. He has no idea that there is going to be a coup against his leadership. And honestly, I think this is usually how it goes when it comes to church splits. This is generally what a church split will look like. First of all, you got the pastor who is too busy doing the actual work of pastoring, doing the work of ministry. He's engrossed in the prayer and the study and the preparation. He's actually busy with the work. But then you got a troublemaker who's not the pastor and he wants to be the pastor. And unfortunately, because he's not doing the work of a pastor yet, he has a bunch of free time. And he uses that free time to gossip, to whisper, to undermine, to show up and flatter, to sow doubt about the current pastor, to care about the people, to listen to the people, to be available to the people. Meanwhile, pastor's just plugging away, busy, doesn't see any of this coming. And by the time the coup is official, by the time the church split is launched, it takes the pastor completely by surprise. That can happen quite often. Don't forget what Jesus taught us. Jesus taught us that the mechanics of this sort of thing matter. Jesus taught us that the shepherd enters through the door. He comes through the right way. He comes in the right way. If you're a pastor, you're coming in the right way. You're letting the Lord put you in that position. But Jesus said the thief doesn't come through the door. He doesn't come through the right way. He sneaks up over the fence. He finds another way in. And that's the troublemaker. That's exactly what the troublemaker does when he's trying to cause a church split. He doesn't come through the right way. He does the kind of stuff that Absalom is doing, the sneaky, behind-the-scenes, undermining kind of stuff. But those mechanics, they matter because they reveal who has proper intentions. The shepherd came through the right way and he's doing the right thing. That's because he cares about the sheep. The thief, he came through the wrong way and he doesn't care about the sheep. He just wants to use the sheep toward whatever gain he's seeking to accomplish in using them. Now, outside the context of a church split, this is still very applicable to the individual Christian on the personal level as well, because this is one of the enemy's oldest tricks in the book. What he wants to do is he wants to flip the script on how you feel about him and how you feel about God. Think about what Absalom's doing here. This is what Satan wants to do with the Christian, with the unbeliever, every person in the world who at one time had a favorable opinion of God. He wants to flip the script. And the way that you feel about God, he wants you to feel that way about him. And the way that you currently feel about him, he wants you to feel that way about God. So he does this kind of sneaky, underhanded stuff. He comes to you in the dark moments and he says, oh man, you're having a time, aren't you? Well, where's God? Where's God been? You know, I can't help but notice that the Lord's blessing like everyone else in that church, but you. I've seen the Lord handing out miracles. When's the last time the Lord gave you a miracle? You know what? God doesn't care about you. I don't know what you did, but you've fallen from his favor. He doesn't care about you, but I do. God wants you miserable and religious, but I want you free. And whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you think your heart is searching after, I want to help you get that. I'm the good guy here. So, sheep need to beware of the thief. And every single one of us individually, we need to be aware of the serpent, the old dragon, Satan, as the book of Revelation tells us. Don't let him flip that script on you. Verse 5. And whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. So this is Absalom playing the game, and he is playing it very well. He is a smooth character. He is the polished politician here. He's doing the whole routine, you know, shaking hands, rubbing elbows, kissing babies, looking good in front of the people. When the cameras are rolling, he's always got a smile on his face. He's doing one of those, I'm one of you act. You know, you're familiar with that. You see it in politics all the time. The first one that came to mind was Dick Cheney suddenly out hunting quail because he's running for an office. And, well, if you're old enough or if you research enough, you know how that happened. He's out there trying to convince everyone, hey, look at me, I'm the everyman. I'm the country boy. I'm one of you guys. And then boom, he ends up shooting his friend. Which tells me, yeah, that's probably the first duck hunt, quail hunt you've ever been on, Dick. You've never done this before. You're pulling the whole I'm one of you act, and it's pretty see-through. Or, you know, back in the day, Bill Clinton jogging to McDonald's, and he's got his entire Secret Service in tow. Like, yeah, Bill, very convincing. That's very normal. Just an everyday guy going to get a Big Mac. Or one of my favorites, Mitt Romney, when the cameras are rolling, eating a hot dog and telling everyone that a hot dog is his favorite meat. Tell me you've never eaten a hot dog without telling me you've never eaten a hot dog. Mitt, a hot dog is not a type of meat. It's made of meat, sure, but you can't say a hot dog is your favorite kind of meat. So, yeah, there you go. Those are politicians playing the game, trying to look good in front of the camera. Meanwhile, everyone else is cringing. Like, oh, gosh, this is embarrassing. They're just putting on an act. And that's what Absalom is doing. He is deceiving the people, and he's using them to climb to the top. Verse 6. Thus Absalom did to all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So he's just intercepting them all, turning them away, getting them mad at David, causing them to fall in love with him. And that's exactly what it says next. It says in verse 6, so Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. What a great word, stole. That's perfect. That's exactly what he did. He's a thief that's not trying to come in the right way, and he stole their hearts. He did not earn their hearts fair and square. He stole their hearts through deception. And man, they're going to rue the day they let that happen. Because by the time this is all over, they're going to find out this guy is actually the devil. This guy's the devil incarnate. And this is going to cost 20,000 lives. Approximately 20,000 lives. Be careful who you're following. Make sure you know who you're following. Well, Arlyn, doesn't that mean if I don't know you very well, I might have to start looking into you? Fine, I welcome it. Look into it. Know who you're following. Whatever capacity you're following them in, if they're leading you in some way, know who you're following. I don't know if you've ever given this any consideration, but considering what we're studying through here, I would suggest to you that Absalom is a perfect type of the Antichrist. Right? We've studied a lot of types of Christ as we've gone through the Old Testament from Genesis to 2 Samuel, skipping Deuteronomy for the time being. Joseph, type of Christ. Moses, a type of Christ. Joshua, a type of Christ. David, a type of Christ. Here's a type of the Antichrist, Absalom. Just take a look at the similarities we see here between Absalom and the future coming Antichrist. They're both Jews, number one, so they're both from the right family. They're both envious of the true king. They're both bitter over their fate. They know what's going to happen, and they're bitter over it. They both love nothing more than to supplant the true king. They both begin suave, charismatic, very eloquent, very sweet, very nice. They both present themselves as the solution to everyone's problems. They both undermine the rule of the king. They both flatter people away from the true king. They both steal the hearts of the people through false peace, but end up actually dragging the people into their war against the true king. I mean, it is a perfect typology between the two of them, a very intriguing typology. And you can dig through that later and go a little bit deeper on that one in your own study time if you'd like to. But I'm going to go ahead and move on with verse 7 after whetting your appetite for that typology. Verse 7, and at the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, please let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed to the Lord in Hebron. Okay, now, important, often viewed error in certain English translations. You'll notice here that the ESV says that this took place at the end of 4 years. All right, if you check that in the King James Version and the New King James Version, it says 40 years. That is a big discrepancy. And they cannot possibly both be right. One of them is wrong and one of them is right. Now, I'm going to suggest to you, I think you see this coming, I'm going to suggest to you that the ESV is right. That is generally my suggestion. It's not always, right? How many of you remember times where I've said, I don't think the ESV got this one right. I think the King James and the New King James Version got it right. You remember me saying that before? Dig through the archives. It's in there. Trust me. But usually I'm finding myself agreeing with the translation of the ESV more. And in this case, this one is an open and shut case for me. Because if you go back to the oldest manuscripts, for example, The Syriac manuscript on this one in the Hebrew says 4 years. Now, interesting, the Pentateuch also says 4 years. The Pentateuch is not an original manuscript. That is a translation. The not the Pentateuch, the Septuagint. The Septuagint. It is a Greek translation of the Old Testament Hebrew. Now, the reason that translation should hold some weight in your estimation is because that is the translation that the New Testament disciples and Jesus himself would quote from when they were quoting Old Testament verses. Generally, they did not quote Old Testament Hebrew manuscripts. When we get those quotes in the New Testament from Jesus, the disciples, the apostles, the writers of the New Testament, they are almost always quoting the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament Hebrew manuscripts. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because the Septuagint, to translate this as 4 years, that is using one of the oldest manuscripts available to us, the Syriac, and that Syriac says 4 years as well. Now, the reason that the King James Version and the New King James Version has translated this as 40 years is because they are relying on much more recent manuscripts that aren't as old. And that number 40 appeared in those more recent manuscripts. But now that we have these older manuscripts, and now that we know that the Septuagint quoted and translated from that older manuscript, I think that's kind of an open and shut case to let us know that this was a copyist error that was made by a scribe. All it takes is one scribe to get one word wrong, and then every scribe that follows him does what? They copy the error, because all scribes do is take what was passed to them and they copy it as faithfully as they can. So if the error gets into the manuscripts one time, it's going to be in everything downstream from that. And I think that's what happened here. Now, you don't necessarily have to agree with me on that. And if you would like to put more faith in the King James Version and the New King James Version, never fear, I have an argument for it. I'll go ahead and give you your argument. Here would be your argument. Your argument could be that 40 years is correct, but it's not talking about the time period from David's last interaction with Absalom. Instead, it's referring to Absalom being 40 years old. Or it's referring to the 40th reign of King David, something to that effect. But for sure, we know it wasn't 40 years from David and Absalom's last interaction until the time that Absalom finally sprung his plan and launched his coup. It just doesn't work. Because then David goes from being 60 to 100 years old when his son finally tries to launch the coup. It can't be. It can't be that. But you do have other ways that you can try to use this verse if you put a lot of faith in the King James Version and New King James Version translations. But back to the verse itself, Absalom is claiming to have made a vow to the Lord that needs to be fulfilled in Hebron. I just want to point that out. He's not claiming that he made the vow when he was in Hebron. You're going to see as we read on in verse 8 here, he actually made the vow somewhere else. He made the vow in Geshur, but he made this vow to be fulfilled in Hebron, which means there's some kind of location requirement tied to this vow, or at least that's what Absalom wants David to think. We're also going to find out shortly that this vow is nothing more than a religious cover for his deception. That's all this is. And it's a good decision. It's a good choice if you're going to be deceptive, because there's no deception like religious deception, right? The most deceived people, the most impossible people to yank out of their deception is religiously deceived people. When you slap religion to it and you tie their feeling, their sense of eternal stability to that religious deception, they're never going to leave it, or almost never. That's why when the cults get their hooks into you, they very well may have you for life if you ever get out of there and get set free by the Lord from that religious deception, you're a blessed person. The Lord, against all odds, went in there and set you free. So it's a good plan. Again, Absalom's doing all the right things to be successful in this coup. Verse 8, for your servant vowed a vow while I lived at Geshur in Aram, saying, if the Lord will indeed bring me back to Jerusalem, then I will offer worship to the Lord. What does he mean? Then I will offer worship to the Lord. That means I will offer worship to the Lord in this way by fulfilling the vow that I made to him. That's what it means. So if your translation says, I will serve the Lord, if you let me go, I'll serve the Lord, it means the same thing. He's saying, I'll serve the Lord or I'll worship the Lord by fulfilling my vow. He's not saying, hey, I was not a believer. I refuse to believe. But Lord, if you'll bring me back to the Holy Land, if you'll get me back home, then I'll serve you. Then I'll worship you. That's not what he's saying here. It's just a simple vow that involves him being home. It's him saying, Lord, I vow to you that if you do get me home someday, here's this vow that I'm going to fulfill in the city of Hebron. But again, none of this is real. This is all made up. Verse 9, the king said to him, go in peace. So he, Absalom, arose and went to Hebron. So he has his father's blessing. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed as a spiritual father for your kid to come to you and say that they have some kind of spiritual thing that they want to do to bless the Lord, and then for you to turn to your kid and say, no. It's tough. I mean, when the kids use that spiritual, what's the word? You know, when they throw the icing on the cake and make it about something spiritual, they just kind of got you, don't they? You almost have to say, okay, yeah, if that's how you want to bless the Lord or please the Lord, what can I say? But yes, go ahead. I mean, in this case, barring a revelational word from the Lord to David that this was not a legit thing, of course it was going to work on David. I mean, it really would take the Lord thundering it from heaven to stop this. And interestingly, neither one of them know this, but this will be the last time these two see each other alive. David is going to see Absalom, but Absalom is never going to see David again. Did I say too much? Okay, I'll just let it out of the bag. The next time that David sees his son Absalom, he's going to be hanging dead from a tree by his excessive 5 pounds every year of hair that he didn't get cut yet. So this is a big moment, and we've had this lesson 4 or 5 weeks ago now, the lesson of don't wait, make amends. Say what you need to say. Fix things. Time is guaranteed. Time is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. But since I have talked about that 4 or 5 weeks ago and even kind of brushed up against it a little bit this past Sunday, I'll just leave it at that. And we'll study on in verse 10. We're only going to, what did I say, verse 12 today? Let me see. Yeah, verse 12 today. So, all right, verse 10. But Absalom sent secret messengers throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, Absalom is king at Hebron. Okay, Hebron was the obvious choice for Absalom's plan because it's his hometown. And don't forget, David spent some years ruling as the king there from Hebron. This was before the 11 tribes had all accepted David as the king over the entire nation. When he was just ruling over the tribe of Judah, this is where he was ruling from. So there are royal, I can't talk tonight, folks. There are royal roots in Hebron, which is a little bit rural as well, as it happens to be. And this is a town that's kind of used to hosting the king. Maybe they miss that. I think Absalom knows that. Like, this town, they once hosted the royal family. We lived here. We ruled from here. And I would think that Absalom has some personal connections there still. And I think he would see Hebron as a place that's just primed and ready to host the royal family once again. This is a good spot to kind of pull his coup and see if he can get the support of the people of Hebron. But notice the word secret. Absalom does not want this to look like an overthrow. He is not ready to be aggressive yet. That'll come, but right now, before he has enough support to get aggressive and actually go against David, he's still working on building support. He's still working on getting some momentum on his side. And really, this is just all a bunch of trickery. What he wants is he wants this to look like a natural succession. He wants people to think, oh, this makes sense. Not sure what happened to David. Maybe he stepped down, maybe he died. But if they're saying Absalom's the king now, I said it again with an N. If they're saying Absalom is the king now, well, he is a son of the king. I think he's probably next in line because the other ones are all messed up, all the other sons. So, yeah, this sounds totally legit. If everyone's saying Absalom is the king, he must be the king. So that's what he's up to. He's not in Hebron to fulfill the vow, this fake vow. He is actually there to stage his coup and steal the throne of David. To do that, as we read, he has planted men that are loyal to him in every tribe. He's like networked this. He's positioned all the messengers. He's built this very elaborate system that's going to help him to rise to the top. And this whole thing activates on the blast of the trumpet, when the trumpet is sounded. And you understand, there's no one that can play a trumpet loud enough that all tribes in all the land of Israel could hear it. This was clearly like a relay system with the trumpets. One guy blasts the trumpet in this tribe, and then the next guy hears it over here, and he blasts this trumpet. So this is a bunch of coordination. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of planning that he's got into it, but it's all going to work the same. That, you know, these folks that are in position to support to support Absalom and be ready to announce to their tribe, Absalom is the king in Hebron. All they got to do is hear that trumpet. When they hear that trumpet relayed to them, whoever their trumpet player is, when he makes that sound, that's when you make your announcement. That's when the plan starts. And then just like that, Absalom will have launched his rebellion, his coup, without even swinging a sword. All just by altering the perception of the public. All just by convincing everyone that this is really happening when it's not. I think you guys know the dangers of fake news and propaganda. But I mean, this is a perfect picture of it in the scriptures. I think misinformation is probably responsible for more harm and catastrophe than just about anything else. I mean, in this country alone, you've seen how they've used this on us. They've used it politically, oh yeah, all the time. As far back as any of us could possibly think, they've been using this. Propaganda, misinformation, fake news. They've been doing it to us philosophically. They've been doing it through music, through movies. Trying to get us to embrace the life philosophy of hedonism. You know, whatever you want, whatever you desire, go for it. Doesn't matter who thinks it's wrong. You got to be you. You got to do you. They've been doing this to us religiously. And they've even been doing this to us biologically. They've been lying to us for a long time about what's healthy to put in our bodies and what isn't. How many of you actually believe the lie and traded away healthy butter for margarine? I know Alan Lane did. He won't touch real butter. He wants margarine, which, if I understand correctly, is one atom or one molecule difference between margarine and plastic. You're basically eating plastic that tastes like butter. How many of you believe the lie that healthy animal fats are bad for you, but seed oils are good for you? So don't cook with beef tallow or bacon grease. No. Cook with Crisco, something we made in a factory and stuck in a jar for you. It may, and it tastes good. They did their work. I was convinced for a long time. That's how easy this stuff happens. By just showing us the food pyramid on the TV and saying these things are good for you and these things aren't. Man, they've been lying to us for a very long time about a whole lot of stuff. And how dangerous that is to create these kinds of illusions and convince us as they do. I wish I could talk about this all night. So much more to say. Just be careful. Be careful what you believe. I'm giving you a lot of warnings tonight, aren't I? Be careful of the thief. Be careful of Satan. Be careful of the misinformation, propaganda, fake news. But back to the story here. Absalom has created this illusion that this is a done deal, that the nation has already chosen Absalom to be the king, that the people have already crowned him as the king, and that the shift of power from David to Absalom has already happened. That's what he pulled off here. A masterpiece. Devilish, again, devilish, but a masterpiece of work. Verse 11, with Absalom went 200 men from Jerusalem who were invited guests, and they went in their innocence and knew nothing. All right, this verse is new information. It backs us up a little bit. It's telling us that when Absalom first left Jerusalem to come down to Hebrew to launch phase 1 of the coup, he took 200 men from Jerusalem with him. And notice the words, invited guests. So that means these weren't 200 randos from Jerusalem, just 200 random people that weren't busy that day. These are 200 invited guests. So these were welcomed by special invite from Absalom, the son of the king. So these are VIPs. These are tribal leaders. These are, perhaps people like judges. These are people that serve in very important roles within their community. And Absalom has taken them to Hebron from the beginning, and it lets us know just the thinking and the planning that has gone into this, that by the time he left Jerusalem for this, he already had these 200 guys in place that were going with him. And these were people he didn't even have to try to influence to be on his side. This is what the verse is telling us. He didn't have to get a signed statement of support from these people. All he needed to do was be seen with these people. These are important people. So Absalom knows, hey, if I'm making my journey down to Hebron with these 200 guys, these important people, these influential people, and I'm wandering around then even after, we spring the plan and the announcement's made that I'm the king in Hebron, and I'm showing up in the towns of these people with these 200 very important people, well, that's going to add some credibility to my claim to the throne. So that's what he did here. We just read it. These 200 VIPs, they were innocent. They didn't know any of this. They didn't know that they were going to be pawns in Absalom's plan when they left Jerusalem to go to Hebron with him. They didn't know that. And the scary thing is that once these 200 men leave the city of Jerusalem and go with Absalom, when it is announced that Absalom is the king in Hebron, guess what? They're not in Jerusalem anymore. You can't just go ask David, hey, David, is this true? You can't just go ask David's staff, hey, is this switch? Is this change? Is this succession really happening? Can't do that. They're not in Jerusalem. So they are more likely to believe this. And again, Absalom is David's son. He probably did appear to be the front runner to succeed David. And so it would be very easy to believe once the announcement is made. Okay, wow, I guess David stepped down. He is getting up there. Or I guess David passed away. He's been sick. That's true. That is true. During this time, there's a psalm. We'll get into it next week. There's a psalm that David wrote about his sickness. He's battling a serious ailment, a serious sickness at this time. And maybe the people are thinking, oh, I guess he passed. I mean, he was really down with it for a while. So in their minds, this could very easily check out. It fits the cultural pattern. It fits succession logic for how these things typically worked with the changing of the guards as it relates to a king. It just fit everything that they know. So Absalom had deceived 200 of Jerusalem's most important men. And here's the killer. This one really hurts. Absalom's got them now, but David's lost them. David's lost 200 of his most important and influential people. And you're going to see he's going to be scrambling in the second half of this chapter. He's going to be scrambling to try to figure this out and get support. Verse 12. And while Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city Gilo, and the conspiracy grew strong. And the people with Absalom kept increasing. Okay, having Ahithophel on your side, that is the cincher. 200 VIPs from Jerusalem, to see Absalom traveling with them, that is impactful, without a doubt. To hear messengers in every city declaring Absalom is the king in Hebron, that is influential, that is impactful, no doubt. But to then look over at Absalom and see Ahithophel with Absalom, supporting Absalom as the new king, that is the cincher. Because, folks, Ahithophel, he's not just a counselor in Israel. At this time, he is the counselor in Israel. We're going to read in the next chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 23. The Bible's going to tell us that the counsel of Ahithophel was as if one consulted the word of God. In other words, if you got advice from Ahithophel, that was the next best thing to checking the scriptures for yourself. This guy was like the wisest man in all of the land. He spoke very powerfully and very accurately on behalf of the Lord. If Ahithophel said it, it's the gospel. That's how the nation of Israel felt. That's what that verse tells us. So when they see Ahithophel supporting Absalom, you know what that is? That takes this to the absolute furthest level. Ahithophel supporting Absalom, that says, okay, it's settled. God clearly has chosen Absalom to be the king. Ahithophel was as good as divine endorsement upon Absalom as being the king. Now here's what's confusing, considering this reputation of Ahithophel as being like almost as good as reading from the scriptures yourself. How in the world could he get caught up in this? Why would he flip? Why would he withdraw his support from David and throw it to Absalom's side. Was he tricked? Was he deceived? Nope, not at all. You want to know what happened here? I'll tell you what happened here. David happened here. Do you know who Ahithophel is? Ahithophel is the grandfather of a pretty little gal by the name of Bathsheba that liked to bath out in the open in the evening. This is her grandfather. We see the family connection from two different verses. 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 3 tells us that Bathsheba is the daughter of Eliam. And then 2 Samuel chapter 23 verse 34 tells us that Eliam is the son of Ahithophel. Thus, Ahithophel is the grandfather of Bathsheba. So when David committed adultery with Bathsheba and then murdered Uriah, understand he knew who she was. He knew who her husband was. He knew who her husband's dad was. He knew who Bathsheba's father was. He knew who Bathsheba's grandfather was. It just happened to be his most trusted advisor. But in that moment of temptation, as he's putting that stuff on the scale, let's see, my desire to have sex with Bathsheba, my friendship and my trusted confidence with my most trusted advisor, what should I do here? Should I destroy this whole family that's so important to me? Or should I fulfill the lust of my flesh and have sex with Bathsheba? And he decided to have sex with Bathsheba anyway, destroying the family of Ahithophel. Destroying that personal and professional relationship. And then we can see it right in the scriptures, almost as if we're reading it as a fact, that right after David's sin with Bathsheba, right after that incident, Ahithophel disappears from the side of David. He goes to a place called Gilo and is there for a decade. He's just off and away. I think he's probably brewing about what David did to him. All I know is that Ahithophel is not joining with Absalom because he loves Absalom. He's joining with Absalom because he hates David. How do I know that? Can I prove that? I absolutely can. I'm going to show you that. You'll see it for yourself in chapter 7, that Ahithophel is chomping at the bit to kill David. It's going to be his first word of advice when Absalom seeks counsel from him. The first thing he's going to say is, Absalom, please, let me choose 12 men. I want David dead like yesterday. He's got to die tonight. Let's kill him. First thing, right away, first decision, let's kill David. Well, we're going to stop right there for this evening. This week, the coup from Absalom's view. Next week, the coup from David's view. We'll have some cleanup work here to do to make our transition into David's view. There's a lot of additional things here that I want to point out about Ahithophel, because Ahithophel is a type for us as well. Do you know who he's a type for? I'll give you a hint. You can do your own homework and see if you can figure it out. But Jesus made it real easy when Jesus quoted a statement that David made about Ahithophel and applied it to someone in the New Testament. All right, let's stand. Let's pray.